Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Lead with Giants TV. Today's guest is Doug Dickerson. He is the author of Leaders Without Borders: 9 Essentials for Everyday Leaders. This is the book. You can grab it on Amazon and I'm sure Barnes& and Noble. Great book, and I've enjoyed actually reading it in the last couple of weeks. And Doug is actually a good friend of mine. And actually, we've got almost half of our mastermind group here on this hangout that we do. But Doug, welcome to our show, sir.
Thank you, Tal. It's a delight to be with you. Been looking forward to it for a while, and glad to finally be here.
Great. And also joining us is Liston Sally from Utah. She's having great weather out there from what I heard.
We are.
All right.
Good to be here, so.
Great. And it's great to have, actually, we're a part of the Lead with Giants community, and that's how actually all of us actually met. So you see what happens when you are interacting and engaging in social media. You create this wonderful piece together. So this is wonderful. I'm looking forward to our interview. And Doug, you've been involved with leadership and doing a lot of good things, writing. I know you're going to write some more books. Hopefully one of our books maybe will be together about customer service together.
Yes.
But you've been going around speaking, doing those kind of things. Maybe just a quick 30 seconds introduction of who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you, Tal, and again, it's a delight to be with you. In my former life, I was a teacher and educator, and I also spent a good number of years in ministry, and that included working in hospitals. Did a lot of hospital work, and so leadership has always been interesting topic for me. It's one of those things that from a very early age, kind of weird, I suppose, but from a very early age, I was drawn to it. It was something that was just really of interest to me. And so I guess you could say it's really kind of a lifelong topic and subject for exploration for me. And so I've used those experiences down through the years of just applying leadership principles throughout my life. And a lot of things that I've done, I've learned the hard way. I've learned the way perhaps not to do it at times, and like we all have, I suppose, the school of hard knocks. But that is kind of the background, So it's just learning those lessons along the way and applying them to everyday life. And how does this play out in my life today and tomorrow? And along the way, how can I help others grow in their leadership walk and their journey, regardless where they are? So I draw from those past experiences to help me formulate my leadership thought that I have now and going forward, how to help others become better leaders. So that's kind of where it all began for me many moons ago.
It's great then, and really resonated with me is the fact that there is a journey for all of us. Some of us thought that we kind of reached the top at somewhere around 40, but we're still learning the lessons of leadership.
We are.
So I'm right there with you on that. It's an ever, but I find it interesting that you were a teacher. How does that, just a kind of a quick question on that is, the great leaders are great teachers. So do you find that some of your background is really helpful in what you do for leadership right now?
Oh, absolutely, because I guess you could say really I'm a teacher by heart. I love it, always have. And just being able to take the principles of leadership and really try to make them come to life. And there's so many different ways that you can do that. It kind of is a reflection. If anybody reads my columns, they would see that really that is a reflection in that. And first of all, I like to tell stories, and there's really always 99% of the time there's kind of a story that leads into the leadership principle. So that's just kind of taking it and teaching it. Okay, it could be anything. It could be from a movie. It can be from sports. It can be from just any observation that you make in life. How does this play out? The only thing I steer clear of and never write about in my columns is politics, and I not that there's not good examples there. There's good and bad examples, but I steer clear of that. Don't want any hate mail. But just I just really try to just look at life, I suppose, through a different lens, and always watching, always observing, looking at things, and just life lessons really that play out. So the background of teaching certainly plays into that, because I just try to set it up in a way that people can relate to, they can identify with it. So if you can make it simple, that's good. Simple works for me because I'm just a simple person. So just communicate those principles in a way that people can relate to easily. And so typically the story kind of just sets it up, okay? It kind of hooks them in, draws them into what I'm saying, and then hit them with the leadership, the lesson of leadership that I'm writing about that week. So it's kind of a niche. It's worked, and people have come to like it and enjoy it. And, you know, so certainly that is something that plays out week in, week out in the style of writing that I do to discuss leadership. So
That's
my
awesome.
book is full of stories. My book is full of stories. There's probably more stories in leadership, really. I don't know, but there's so many stories that I communicate. So it's just a way to apply the lessons of leadership, and it's everywhere if you're just paying attention. You know, it's not hard to find material. It's not hard to find life lesson or application. If you're just paying attention and looking, it's there.
It's wonderful. I'm actually, my bedtime story last night was about Abraham Lincoln. So I was actually reading the book by Donald Phillips that I think is Lessons in Leadership from Abraham Lincoln. And I was just really hooked by the first chapter, and I said there's so many great, I'm a big fan of history and people in history, so how they, and here's an example of how someone who he had so many failures actually, but became one of the best presidents in the United States. So this is really interesting story. So you write about stories. This is a great example of what does a great leader looks like. So, but let's talk about your book. And for those of you who haven't had really the chance to get your hands on it, and it's also I want to say that it's forwarded by Mark Sanborn, and this is the book. In case you haven't seen it, this is kind of an bad angle on it, but Leaders Without Borders, 9 Essentials for Everyday Leaders. And Doug, what was the premise for writing Leaders Without Borders?
Well, when I began the process of writing the book and putting it together, really I was trying to answer 2 questions. Number one, what is something that I can say to a novice leader starting out, somebody that's just starting out in their leadership journey? What are some of the important, essential things that really they need to know? And if they can just take on and latch on to some of these principles, that will really help them in their walk starting out. And these principles just kind of began to unfold as the writing process continued. But the second question that I was really trying to answer as well, in addition to what can I say to a leader just starting out, was what can I say to the seasoned leader that's been around for a while? And really it came down to what can I say to a leader starting out? What can I say to a leader that's been around for a while? And it comes back to these principles of, you know, they're not necessarily principles that are new, you know, but they're reminders, okay? If you can remember this starting out when you're 20, that, you know, having a good attitude is going to make a difference just in everyday life, and leadership is going to help you. If you have an optimistic outlook on life, that's going to help you. If you learn some of the essential principles of teamwork, that's going to help you. But yet also on the back end of your leadership, it's just coming full circle. It's reminders. These were the things starting out that were important. These were the things that helped you develop and grow as a leader. And it's also the things that you need to be reminded of wherever you are in your journey, because that journey is always ongoing. You know, you never graduate from it. So really, Tal, it comes down to this. The principles don't change. We do. We change. We're the ones changing. The principles don't change. You know, it's just like the law of gravity. It doesn't change, but yet, you know, if you go out and try to do something stupid and jump off the roof, you know, you're not Superman. You're going to fall. So, but when we understand that the principles don't change, we do. Sometimes we need reminders of this is important. These are essential things that are going to help you to become a better leader. And I closed the book on a chapter on legacy. So it always is kind of a progression of building towards that. You don't have to read the book in any particular order to understand and latch onto the principles that I talk about. But it is leading to that conclusion of what kind of a legacy are you going to leave as a leader. And so if you're paying attention to these things, you're working on these things, you're intentional about being a team player, if you are intentional about loyalty and how important that is in your work environment, that's going to make a big difference. So we just need to have reminders that keep us grounded in who we are and what this is all about. And that's really kind of is the premise of the formation of Leaders Without Borders and why that is important to us.
Let's talk about also, you share a story in the last chapter about leaving a legacy. You share a story about a teacher. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that story is in there for a reason, and not twofold. One, I like the story, and secondly is because my own personal impact, my own journey. The story is that of a teacher who, well, some students, some grad students were at Johns Hopkins years ago, and they were tasked with going into a neighborhood in Baltimore, and they were given this task of going in, doing some research, finding out based upon economics, based upon the crime rate, based upon all these different factors, sociological factors, what were the chances of these 200 guys going to prison? And so they did all these studies, and they came back with their conclusions that, a certain amount would go into prison, they would drop out of school, all these different things. Well, years went by, and another group were students were tasked with the follow-up to test the theory, how it played out, and what were the conclusions. And so what they did, they went back and followed up on these 200 students. And what they found out was that out of the 200 students that they had interviewed, only 4 of them had ever done any kind of time in jail or whatever. A couple had died, but the rest of them they were able to track down eventually. And come to find out, they hadn't gone to prison. They hadn't done all these things that perhaps they were expected of them, or whatever, how they had them pegged. And so they were trying to find out why. And so the conclusion basically came down to this. They all pointed back to a teacher, and they said, well, there was this teacher. So they said, well, we need to find this person. And they tracked her down and found out where she was living and went to her and talked to her. And they were trying to find out from her, tell us, is there anything that you can point to, that impact that you had that would cause them to be successful and turn out the way that they did? And she just kept thinking, well, no, I can't think of anything. And so kind of just by happenstance, she just kind of muttered, she said, well, I love those guys. And it was just really one of those powerful stories that spoke to me, because I had teachers growing up that made a significant impact on my life, because when I was coming up as a little kid, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And it was because of teachers that that poured into my life and helped me that I was able to, overcome those obstacles, overcome those learning challenges that I had, and not let that be something that defined me in a negative way, but it was something that really was kind of turned into a challenge. Okay, you've got this. I mean, I could, muddle through and read the material or whatever. Test taking was kind of difficult in the early days. I could talk to you about the topic all day long, but what happened was I had teachers that just really instilled a love of learning, a love of reading. And so I had parents that were great, that were very supportive and helping to overcome those challenges and those days that were, made it kind of difficult. So that story is there on purpose, just because it, as with my teaching background, and also the impact that teachers had in my life, that I was able to not let that be something that defined me, something that held me back or anything like that. It was just something that I used as motivation, to overcome it and to not be pegged by that, not be defined by that. And so, I had teachers who believed in me, parents, believed in me, and just refused to let me quit. And so, it was difficult, but they didn't let me use that as an excuse. If anything, it just made me work even harder to become successful. And so I really kind of look at the books that I've written, the weekly stuff that I do, really as an improbable journey. If you look back on those early days, it was, maybe some people might have just written you off and said, certainly he's not going to be out writing books, 30 years from now, but, see what happened. So I attribute a lot of that to the teachers that I had that were just so great and inspiring, and, then to be able to, years later, hopefully instill that same kind of confidence in people, belief in people. So just kind of came full circle, if you will.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. It sounds like a great story of adversity that created courage in you to continue and become a great leader, somebody who has actually defied the odds, and now is going to, obviously has a book out and those kind of things. That, knowing you, I know there's more to come. So it's a great attribute that you have. I want to also include Liz in the conversation. See, I don't know how long you guys known each other, for a while or a few years, but let me kind of have her jump in.
I think it's been about a year and a half now that we've known each other. I think Doug's trying to tell me I need to learn to tell stories, but
hey, it's hard. Let me say this, because I know my father does what you do every day, so it's very hard for people who are financial analysts or advisors, or on that side, the left brain is very much dominant, so it's very hard for them to be that storyteller. Although my father can tell a good story, it's not a daily habit. He's really great at numbers. So
yeah, I feel for him. Okay, so Doug, when people hear Leaders Without Borders, a lot of them mistakenly think that this only applies to people who hold a formal position of authority. So how does Leaders Without Borders, how does that play into the lives of those who aren't in authority positions?
Well, it comes back, I think, like this, because the foreword to the book was written by a friend of mine, Mark Sanborn. Mark Sanborn also wrote a book entitled "You Don't Have to Have a Title to Be a Leader." And I think that speaks volumes. Just the title alone, I think, speaks volumes. So when people see that they are leaders, that it has nothing to do about the title, has nothing to do about the position. It's about the influence that you have. Our mentor, many of our mentors, John Maxwell says that leadership is influence. And so really, I think it has very little to do with title, has little to do with position. I think it has a lot to do with your mindset. How do you want to be? How do you want to use your influence to impact people? And so a lot of times, back in the old days when I was in hospital chaplaincy, we would go into a critical situation. We would go, I did a lot of ER stuff. I did a lot of death stuff. And you go into a room, and in our training, in our formal training, one of the things that we had to do was to be able to immediately walk into a room and identify who the leader was. Okay, you got 20 people, you got a very desperate situation going on. You go in, within 10 seconds, you pretty much have it figured out. You can find them pretty quick. Okay, this is the leader. This is the person now that I need to gravitate to in order to help resolve this situation and move people along and get going, whatever needed to be done. So, same way I think in just everyday life, in your office, in your business, wherever. The principles apply to everyone. So whether you have the title, whether you have the formal positional title in your organization, the principles apply across the board, I think, Liz, to each and every one of us. And so it's just learning how to get on board with it, how to be a better person. If I'm going to be a better person and a better leader, I'm going to be able to extend the sphere of my influence in ways that perhaps the person with the title doesn't, if that person is not committed to growing as a leader. So really it's an individual decision that we each have to make and execute.
I absolutely agree with you, and I love that part of it, and that's why I wanted you to touch on it. So
thank you.
That's great. So, Doug, I know we're kind of getting ready to kind of close a little bit here in a few moments. Talk to us about, I know I really like about your philosophy when it comes to leadership, and when you're driving your message to people, how important is it, not just influence, but a positive attitude, a sense of optimism, because leadership is not easy. And when you're talking about what you have to go through day to day, some days are up, some days are down, you got to stay resilient. What is your take on keeping that attitude positive throughout the journey?
Well, I think first of all it's a realization that like you just mentioned, Tal, it's not always going to be easy. I wish it were, because it would just make life a whole lot easier. But the bottom line is life happens to all of us. And so in that context, you're going to have days that are you're just on cloud nine, you're just soaring, you're doing great. You're going to have other days that are going to be, you just wish you could just kind of hit the reset button and start all over again and wonder why I got out of bed. So, it comes down, I think, to the choice that we have as it relates to our attitude. Zig Ziglar said that your attitude, not your aptitude, determines your altitude. So how high and how far I go is a choice that I make. And it's not always about what happens to me, it's what happens in me. I can't control, and you can't control, Liz, you can't control the things that happen to you. What a life we would live if we could, but we don't. We don't choose those things that happen to us, but we do choose the way that we respond to it. And so those are defining moments that each one of us every day face. And so, some of those decisions come to us rather easy, and sometimes they come to us rather hard. And I think dependent upon the circumstance of the day and the challenges that we face. So our attitude is our choice. We're in control of that. And so I have to every day remind myself that I'm in control of it. And the way people treat me through the course of the day, be it good or bad, I'm not going to let that affect me. I'm going to choose to keep it strong, keep it right. And wow, there's just some days I struggle with that. It's really hard, and there are some days that are easier. And so you use the word Tal, resilience, and I think that's such a key word, I think, in terms of how that plays out. I have to keep going back to the foundational things that make me the person that I am, make me the leader that I am, and allow those things to guide me through the course of the day. So that comes down to values that I choose to live by, have my life governed by, and those are the types of things that are going to make it a better day for me, going to make me a better leader at the end of the day. Mark Twain had a great quote. He said, the two most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And so
I like that.
Yeah. And so it's discovering your why. I can't choose the attitude for others that I wish they would have, but I can choose mine. And how far and how high I'm going to go is connected to that. So even when I look back in my life in those early days when learning was such a struggle, I did throw in the towel, say, forget it, I can't read this, I can't do that. It made me fight, and it made me strive and work even harder to overcome. So it's not allowing your circumstances to define you. It's not allowing those struggles to define you. As it is choosing, this is the way I'm going to live it. And it is a daily choice. I wish it was one of those things that we could just make a decision and then click autopilot and never have to worry about it again. Sometimes I have to worry about it hour by hour, and so those are the realities that we face. But nose to the grind, keep your heart right, keep your attitude strong, and those are the kind of the daily choices that we make that help us to succeed and overcome it.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on the show, because it's for those of you who really this is what it's all about. When we're talking about stories, is everybody's story is a struggle and a triumph, as I call it, and that's why I love reading history, because it gives you the biography of people who were overcoming massive adversity in their life, but became great because of overcoming those adversities in their life.
Right. One of the stories in the book, I'll just make it quick, one of my favorites is of Thomas Edison, all the great inventions and, the reason, and yet, he had a great fire that destroyed his lab, and, he only had it insured for a certain amount of money, and the damage far exceeded the damage to the lab. Everything was destroyed, ruined. But his attitude was, thank God we can start anew. And 30 days later, he delivered his first phonograph after that fire that destroyed everything. So, adversity comes, setbacks come, challenges come for all of us. So it's really, welcome to life. That's just the way it works out.
Yes. Yes. No, that's very true. That's very true.
Not to be a downer, but hey, it's how you choose to react, how you choose to respond. 30 days later, he delivers that first phonograph, and the rest, they say, is history. But, he could have just walked away from that fire. He could have walked away from the rubble and said, forget it, it's all lost, all gone, forget it. But he didn't. And many great things came out of that incident. So you don't let your setbacks, your struggles, your disappointments define you. Those are the things that you overcome on the way to greatness, and those are the things that you overcome on your journey to success. And so my encouragement is just to keep at it. Stay optimistic, stay positive, keep your attitude strong. There's no adversity, there's no setback that you cannot overcome if you put your heart and mind to it.
Great. Well, that's a great finish for our show, and thank you so much. I know you're working on a couple of projects at the same time, and we're meeting once a week on the weekends for mastermind groups and other things that we're working on. So I really appreciate you giving us the time to.
Well, thank you. Delighted to be with you. Appreciate it very much.
And Liz as well. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Well, great. Thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful afternoon. The rest of hopefully the weather is in your location, like Dallas, where it's hot and warm, almost summertime here. But,
almost 80 here today, so I'll take it. Yeah.
So we all have the same weather then. Yeah. All right. You guys take care, and let me go ahead and close this one here. Just a moment.